Welcome to the Old South Meeting House. The Old South Meeting House was built in 1729 on land that once belonged to Governor John Winthrop. It was not a church, rather a meeting house for Puritans to worship at. This meeting house was the third parish built in Boston and the largest building in Boston at the time of the American Revolution. This building was the backdrop for many key events that increased tensions between Britain and the colonies, including the Boston Tea Party. The Old South Meeting House's role in the American Revolution came by accident. It was the largest meeting house in town. The Old South Meeting House was a place where patriots discussed and challenged the British government's ideas and acts. Typically, the colonists would hold these types of meetings at Faneuil Hall, but when crowds became too big, they would relocate to the Old South for more room. One of the first meetings held at the Old South Meeting House happened the day after the Boston Massacre. Mobs of angry colonists were moved from Faneuil Hall to the Old South. They demanded that the British troops be sent back to England. The agitated colonists yelled and hollered at the British troops. Lieutenant Governor Hutchinson succumbed to the colonist protest and removed the troops from Boston. The town was calm for several years. The Old South Meeting House is most famous for being where the Boston Tea Party began. The ship, Dartmouth, arrived at the port of Boston on September 9, 1773. The colonists had to pay the tax for the tea and unload the cargo within 20 days. The deadline for this was December 16th. The Patriots wanted the ship to return to England with the tea, but Governor Hutchinson would not allow the ship to go back with its cargo. That day, December 16th, about 7,000 colonists crammed into the Old South Meeting House. A delegation was sent to Governor Hutchinson, asking him to return the tea a final time. At 5:45 p.m., the delegation was returned, and again Hutchinson refused. Samuel Adams, a member of the Sons of Liberty, asked a few questions, then said, "Gentlemen, this meeting can do nothing more to save our country." He was not accepting defeat, but these words were a signal. That night, close to 100 men came to the Old South Meeting House's doors, disguised as Mohawk Indians. Along with war calls, the colonists whooped and hollered to the wharfs and Boston Harbor, "A teapot tonight." Even though only about 100 to 130 men participated in the Boston Tea Party, there were around 2,000 spectators. The Boston Tea Party, one of the primary events that caused the war in colonies, began right here where you are currently standing. The Old South Meeting House is still standing today because of a group of activists who saved this historic site from being demolished in 1886. The Old South Meeting House was sold by its congregation in 1886 and was scheduled for demolition. However, at the last minute, a group of activists saved the Old South from the wrecking ball. This was the first successful act to preserve a historic site in New England. Today, the Old South Meeting House is a museum for the public. It was turned into a museum in 1887 and has been that way since. Today at the museum, visitors can enjoy civic dialogues, historic reenactments, and much more. This historic landmark is truly a building to treasure because of the role it played in the events it witnessed in our fight for independence. Thank you.